Hello and welcome to Agents of Nonprofit. My name is Alexander Lapa, and I'm here to speak with everyday superheroes helping nonprofits. Joining me today is Elena Yunusov to talk about AI and nonprofits. Elena, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Welcome.
So, to start us off, I was wondering if you could share your superhero origin story. That is to say, how did you get started working with nonprofits?
So I don't know if I would call myself a superhero, but thank you. I started working with nonprofits really years ago and have worked on and off in various capacities. Most recently, through my foundation that I started called Human Feedback Foundation. So yeah, it's just a sector that gives me hope, and I want to support it.
Can you talk a bit more about this Human Feedback Foundation?
Yeah, I started it just over a year ago after working at Canada's largest bank, RBC, as head of marketing function at Borealis AI, which is the bank's research and development arm for deep learning. And so there I was in charge of responsible AI advocacy. And we've published a ton of research and open source tooling and tutorials on how to do AI responsibly, which of course had me thinking quite deeply about incentives and data and governance structures for the algorithms. And so when ChatGPT came online, I really did think that there is a space for a voice that would advocate for AI to be more human-centered and more open, which is how I started Human Feedback Foundation. That's really is what sits at the core of the work and our mission.
So, when you say responsible AI, mentioned governance, more human centered, and more open. Are there any of the principles about having a responsible AI? I mean, obviously, this is in the context of nonprofits, right? It's not general AI. But is there like other principles that you're trying to advocate for?
I think these are really quite important, and they maybe aren't as surface level as people might think. Because in AI today, we are at the moment where we think we can get away with simulation first approach to AI, which is not what I'm seeing when I see AI in production. When you put AI in production, there are good reasons to keep humans in the loop and humans steering AI and being augmented by it. I really fundamentally do not believe that AI is a replacement technology, that it is good at automation full on, where you automate human factor away the way you would in traditional software, which was predictive. In probabilistic era we're in, that's just not an option in many, many, many domains and industries. And I really do think we're in danger of just pursuing goals that do not make human sense and will not make our lives better. And so human-centered approach to AI is fundamental to me about the way we want to shape the future.
I remember seeing a chart not long ago, and I can't remember it exactly offhand, but I'll try my best to recount it. There was basically four grids, an x-axis and a y-axis, and one of them was things that are easy to do and was it value or time consuming, and then the other way. So the idea would be, and I'm not really explaining this well, but I'll try my best, is the idea is that computers and automation can help with the automation stuff, the easy to do, that's low value, that's less empathic or less involved, whereas humans can then, if they use AI correctly, they can focus their time now on the high energy, high intensity, high impact, high human level type of stuff. So to your point, if you see AI as a tool just to simplify the tasks that we're not really good at, that require a lot of crunching or calculation or analysis, it can free us up to be able to spend time doing things that we are really good at and add a lot of value to and are more human. Would that be more or less what you're trying to say?
I think it's really requires more research. That is one way of looking at it. This isn't a solved problem. There are many people who would say, well, it's not natural to us to be only focused on difficult things. we live our lives in a mode where that's not what we do. That would be crisis mode 90% of the time. That would be probably inhumane also. And it's why, for example, if when you are a driver in a car that is a self-driving car, they've seen quite a few crashes from this type of attitude that I don't know if it's correct, where you are only required when the car is in crisis and you're about to be hit by a car or some other bad things will happen, and then as a driver I really expected to jump from nothing to 95%. Oh, like on that's just not humane either. There just needs to be a lot more thinking and research into how to do human AI collaboration, human AI teaming, how to develop AI that is fundamentally human centered, that isn't there to, like you said, it's not that simple where you give it some tasks where we're supposedly bad at that. It's such an interesting area of research and discussion, and quite frankly, policy, but also everyday implementation of AI. Yeah, because if you wanted to be driving your cars, that's not how you maybe do human in the loop, really.
So for the car situation, I totally get it. Going from 0 to 95 just to jump into crisis mode is probably not a good idea. But I see that as a gap. It's just a technology gap in that the computers and the AI is not strong enough yet to be able to manage those situations. Whereas hopefully at some point in the near future, we can go and get to fully automated driving where the computer will be able to make those kinds of decisions and we can totally be just a passenger all the way through. So I understand that we're not there yet, but to me, it's just a technology gap as opposed to another type of gap.
Well, I don't know if I agree. I think if it is a technology gap, but technology will always need stability for it to perform better. That's why it does so well in staged experiments and doesn't do so well in real life. And so, yes, of course, if you have infrastructure that is friendly to self-driving cars, you will need to retrofit your roads. You will need to retrofit signage potentially. It will perform very well, like maybe the trucks that deliver mail, where there is quite a bit of predictability in your day. You have a specific route to get from point A to point B. I mean, the minute you go out of distribution, it will not perform well. I just don't see it. I see it with ChatGPT and my tasks, and it's the same thing. And I don't know if it's a gap, to your point, or that's just the reality of AI specifically, because it is not meant to be 0 or 1. And so, how much of it will be good enough for us in terms of self-driving is the question, really. And that, again, is a human question. It's not a technology question, because technology will not be perfect. It just won't. It will not think of every single crisis point, and it will not have a perfect response to everything ever. And unpredictability is just how this world is. It's how the world runs. We are very good at it, adjusting to it. Will we have the same threshold for machines in terms of good enough compared to ourselves? Probably not. We'll probably ask for a higher standard. And so I really do think that we will have, even with self-driving cars, quite a long way to go still. I will much sooner believe in self-driving buses than cars.
That's a curious point that you made of higher standards, because as humans, we make mistakes, we err all the time, right? And yet, when a computer does it, we somehow feel the need to put them at a higher standard. They have to do better than us. And I'm curious to why you think that is. Why can't we accept a certain level, the same level of mistakes and error in a machine that we can in another human?
Well, like I said, it's machines are not people. I really don't want us to pretend that machines are human in any way, shape, or form. And so we make human affordances to each other. We do tend to, what's the word? I can never pronounce anthropomorphize machines, uh, which can be used against us, really. Like, all of the tendencies like that can end up being horrible for us. I mean, what does then stop us from preventing from forming, romantic relationships and friendships and companionship? And would that be good for us fundamentally? I really don't think it will be in the long run anyway. That's not evolutionary good for us, even if it is good in some instances here and there. So why would we treat machines as humans? I don't know. We don't treat our cars as humans. We don't treat our bridges as human either. They're infrastructure, and they should benefit us, and they should be steered by us and shaped by us. And we will be shaped by them because it is a loop, but it should be on us to do the iterations.
Let's jump back then to AI for nonprofits. Maybe you can give us a landscape picture of, where are we today in terms of how nonprofits can use and should use AI?
Yeah, so where we are today is AI is getting commercialized and adopted quite rapidly in private sector. And so if you go sector by sector, from big tech to industry to government to nonprofits, and look at them all, nonprofits are lagging behind. And that is not new. We've been doing that for a while, and we've been, honestly, I don't want to say we've been fine. It hasn't been fine, but it has not been this existential, I don't think, before, because the technology itself, the leap that we're seeing now, is maybe comparable to the birth of the internet, where, yeah, if you were a charity with no presence on the internet, you were at a disadvantage fundamentally. That is what we're seeing with AI right now. And so not only that, but also the incentives to adopt AI responsibly are there for the nonprofit sector much more strongly than for the industry or tech sector, which is great because we need more case studies of how to do AI in human-centered way. So there is a massive opportunity for the sector to level up and show the way, to be honest, and shape the future of AI to be human-centered, to be more responsible, to be more open. And so not to have these voices at the table right now is not setting us up for success as humanity. That is why we're really quite committed to helping nonprofits of every size to leverage AI and lead the way.
Yeah, nonprofits in general tend to be technology not adverse, but at least delayed. I don't know any nonprofits that embrace technology. Actually, I see the reverse. I've worked with clients that they don't want to be the early adopters of any kind of new technology. They rather stick with something that's tried and true. And I think that has to do with risk mitigation, right? They don't feel that they have the ability to take those kinds of risks in case it goes bad. Versus if they delay their decisions in technology, they can wait for certain standards to be put in place or certain technologies to mature to the point where, okay, now we know that we can rely on this, and then they move toward it. To be able to change that mindset to say, no, you guys need to be at the forefront. You need to have a voice at the table. I mean, that must be a very difficult undertaking and a lot of convincing to do. Is there any kind of messaging that you normally add to that to be able to show them that they should be at the table?
So I'm not here to educate or advocate. I think organizations that understand the opportunity, that understand the strain on resources, they know this already. They just don't know how. So it is much easier for us to work with organizations that want to lead and understand the moment they're in and are ready to step up but need support with that than change the minds of somebody who will take another 20 years to implement, something simple like CRM. We thankfully have a range of nonprofit organizations, and some of them are feeling it more than others. And many of them are rightly seeing that ever since the pandemic, the demand on their services just 10x. And that is just one way for them to deliver on their mission, which is the fundamental reason they exist at all. Speaking of risk mitigation. And those are the leaders in the sector that we're happy and proud to support.
Yeah, that makes sense. So you want to have the people who are ready to eat at the table as opposed to convincing them that they're hungry. Are you generally happy with the state of AI? I mean, is it because I know you mentioned a few issues that you see AI heading towards. I imagine, of course, you have a more optimistic perspective that if we can get enough people at the table and that we're able to have these better conversations, that we can maybe not change, but redirect some of the direction of where AI is going to become more responsible, human-centered, and open.
So that is our hope. Even more importantly, I really want to see AI be used for good. And I think what we're doing is we're prototyping that kind of future now with the pilot program that we've been funded to deliver. Because AI for good specifically, just maybe like many other tech for good initiatives, suffered through the lack of scale. And we're trying to change that.
Okay. What are some of the challenges that you're seeing on a day-to-day basis? Like, where are your points of resistance that you know that you need to overcome in the next coming months?
So maybe this is naive, but I don't see any points of resistance. I see incredible momentum. And so what we really do need to do is keep it up and deliver on the promise and on the pilot, and then make a very compelling argument to expand it and extend it, to bring more nonprofits into the age of AI safely, responsibly, and for us to shape that future together and ensure that AI serves and not undermines societal well-being.
Can you talk a bit more about that end goal? Like, so like the idea that what does it mean to you to be responsible, to have proper governance, to be more human-centered, to be more open? Like what the big themes is the impression I'm getting, at least through our conversation, is that AI should just be a tool like any other tool, maybe a fancier tool, but it's really meant to be automation, and it should not replace certain human elements. And I was curious if you could just add a bit more color to that to see, in your vision of where humans and AI are working together, what is the role of each at a high level?
Well, like I said, there is going to be a lot more research done on this, is my hope. Where I'm seeing successes, especially in the nonprofit sector, is when you involve people that you serve in design and development and testing and validation of these tools. And you put together a process that is based on active human loops going back and forth, so that you, because you're a nonprofit, you would care about your algorithms not being biased. You would care quite a lot about security of your algorithms as well, and you would care quite a lot about people's privacy. Some of the fundamentals of responsible AI are just built in, they're part of the DNA in the nonprofit mindset. And so practicing that mindset is what responsible AI adoption really does look like. It gives you an opportunity to take your values, and I don't know what the word is.
Instill?
It's instill, but it's bake them into your algorithms, really scale them, and show up in a way that you do through your volunteers and hotlines. Scale that farther and have more impact, and ultimately serving more people.
Do you have any concerns about privacy? I mean, you talk about values and privacy a little bit, but because AI, of course, needs data to be able to be better at what it's trying to achieve. And of course, you have to share that data, and sometimes the data isn't always public domain, that it sometimes can be private data. And then choosing your AI model in general, choosing a more public one versus a private one, in which case The difference rather being the private one, whatever data you share with it will not be shared with other outside of your organization. I'm just curious to know what your your view is on, how do we manage all this privacy and how do we maintain a sense of ownership and at the same time making sure that the AI is able to evolve.
So for us to be asking these questions at all already puts the sector far and above in many ways than many startups I can think about. And it is helpful to challenge that narrative that you just need more data, because I don't know if that's true at all. There are many benefits to data minimization. There are many benefits to federated approach to deep learning. There are many interesting ways to work with data in privacy preserving ways that are there for people to leverage. It just does take commitment to privacy that hopefully overrides incentives that would want you to behave otherwise. And so it isn't that the practices and best practices don't exist, but it's helpful to have that alignment baked into the organization to be asking these things and collecting data in ways that make sense and help you create better technology that serves your constituents, but also not undermine their own sense of what they should and shouldn't be sharing, and with what purpose the data is collected at all.
It's interesting because I had a conversation this past weekend with a friend of mine, and we were talking about AI and the evolution of AI. And his position was that, or he understood that the reason we can't get to artificial general intelligence, AGI, is because there isn't enough data for the AI to consume. So he seems to take the mindset of we need more data to be able to train the AI. And you're saying something different. I'd love to know just a bit more of, what is it about data or lack of data that allows us to keep moving technology forward without having to consume, everything that humans have ever produced?
Well, first of all, I don't believe the current state of things is optimal, where we're all harvested for data all the time. What eventually happens is we opt out, which we already see in data commons and in open source specifically, but we will see it on organizational level as well. And I also don't believe we should be pursuing goals such as AGI. That is my personal belief. I'd rather pursue human-centered AI. And if AGI is the path to that, great, but please prove that that's the case, because the way I think about that pursuit is it's just there. It's techno-utopian in a way that I don't relate to. Will it make my life better or yours? Please explain how. And if we need more data for that, please explain again why, and why would you then not have incentives in place that are proper incentives? Because being harvested for data, no one's perfect life looks like that. But that's what we're seeing. We're seeing more and more of that bad behavior, which of course undermines trust in technology. And so what we risk with doing that is for AI to be becoming a tobacco industry one day, where especially if you fail on delivering utility, and then you also disrespect people and get perceived as harmful, that would be really unfortunate if in pursuit of AGI, we just forget what we are even actually doing this for, which is hopefully we're building technology for it to be useful to people.
I like that comparison to the tobacco industry because you're right. I do see elements of that myself in that, we're pushing forward at all costs without asking what those costs really mean to us. So that's a lovely comparison.
We're incurring a debt for sure.
Definitely.
And we'll have to pay it sooner or later. And we can right now atone. I think it's time.
And better now to correct the course than, wait till it's too far down the road and then all of a sudden say, oops, we messed up and we're a tobacco company now, kind of thing. I get that.
Could be 5 years away. Could be faster getting there than to AGI. That's the irony there.
Like I think with most people, I've got two perceptions or two perspectives on AI in general and AGI. I read some books about the future and how all the positive things that AGI can bring, all the benefits, the diseases, climate change, solutions to problems that we have difficulties solving. And then, of course, the means to get there. The ends doesn't always justify the means, right? How we get there is important, and how we don't dehumanize ourselves in the process and become just data points. Because right now, the most valuable thing that we are to most corporations is just data, so that they can start doing their advertising and marketing and stuff like that.
Yeah, and
So
we're
there's a
also
balance.
really expensive source of data. That's the
Mhm.
hilarious part. That is what's dangerous because then we go, okay, then we'll create synthetic data. And then that's when organizations like ours will really matter because you do not want to live in a world of synthetic reality with nobody to tether you back, which is what we're building when we all feed models with its own output. We do not right now seeing good we do not see good outcomes from that. So in the near future, we will be augmenting it with human data for sure. How far that future extends, I don't know. But I don't fundamentally want to live in a world where we are solving human problems without human input. I just don't think that's a good world to live in.
So, what are some of the mechanisms that you use and advocate for to be able to balance the scales more toward the human side of things?
So we are a very new organization, and I'm sure there is a lot more than that we could be doing. But we have a pilot program we run to bring nonprofits into the age of AI. Nonprofits being mission-driven organizations with societal well-being at the core. The dangers of building AI irresponsibly within that mindset and DNA are much lower. And so they are important organizations to balance the scales away from synthetic type future towards something that is more human centered. That is why human centered is in our mission as well. And we are a nonprofit organization for that reason as well. So that is something we're thrilled to do and proud to be working with large nonprofits and small nonprofits on AI adoption and upskilling and developing responsible AI adoption playbook and framework for the sector. We are also running a mentorship program where we are working with computer science data analytics students in two major universities right now because what we're seeing, I think, is emergence of a new type of engineering. We just need for engineering to be more human-centered, just like there was, chemical engineering that emerged at one point. It's really important for a new type of engineering to emerge. And we're trying to see what it would look like and prototype that. And through mentorship, where we give students projects to build, they are fundamentally human-centered projects. And so they're not, you could think of it as practice-based ethics. They're not the course on ethics that you take. They're projects that you build where those questions come up and they're worthy of discussion. And then you need to build it from 0 to 1. So you really are doing implementation of some of the decisions and discussions that you've had. And then you are also doing it with the support of an experienced industry mentor who can carry you as a student group from 0 to 1, which is incredible because as a student, you get a project that we know students are incredibly proud to have built something over the course of a semester, and it's in your GitHub and you can talk about it. We, in fact, invite students to do demo days in front of industry peers and talk about the work that they've done. It's amazing for them to get such early exposure to the production side of it, which is where we focus our attention the most. Because I think there are many amazing people doing research. And I think there's a lot of voices that are really useful voices doing policy. And those are complicated, very busy, noisy spaces. But when it impacts you or me, it impacts us at the product level. And it's engineers who are building the tools at the end of the day, engineers and product teams with business leaders helping make some decisions, but fundamentally it's engineers. And so if we just want to, prototype and build maybe a new kind of builder that will be more cautious and careful around some of the human-centered questions and not just have a default of automating us away. Understand why we should be in the loop, why we are part of the stack, and we will remain there. And there are ways to work with that. And what are those ways? We need engineers to absolutely think about these things quite deeply.
It sounds like with enough voices, with enough momentum and movement, we actually can influence the larger companies who are building the AIs. Because I want to make sure it's clear too. I mean, it's possible today for a nonprofit to what's the right word? Create its own instance of AI that they have more control over than more of an open AI or an AI that's shared with other people, or the evolution of AI. They take a version of an AI and then they can use it and train it and so forth. But in terms of the training, the evolution, the forefront, the organizations like OpenAI, Google and so forth, who are creating the AIs and pushing those boundaries, I'm getting the impression that even in those situations, if there are not a lot of, if there are enough nonprofits at the table and adding their voices to the conversation, they can actually influence where those evolutions go. Is that
absolutely? I was about to mention our third recent launch and success, where we have partnered with Prolific, which is a startup in UK, ML Commons, Hugging Face, and Collective Intelligence, and a few other partners to bring about human-driven benchmarks to help evaluate frontier models. That type of new level of benchmarking, which isn't technical, that is human, anchored in human experience, and what it is like for me, for you, to use ChatGPT or Claude, and how they behave and how steerable they are. Incredibly important for frontier model builders. Another interesting area where nonprofits can play a massive, massive role is codify our societal values and conventions, because that domain expertise they just don't have. And I really do want to stress that we believe in collaboration, and we believe in education, and we believe there are smart people on every side of this conversation, and that we should be working together to make technology work better for us. And so I'll give you an example. I went to a Kids Help Phone strategy session, and they talked about what essentially is red teaming, where you stress test the models and you give it a prompt that is really quite morbid. The prompt is, I want to die. And the models don't know anything else about you. So you're doing it blindly with no history and no specific account attached. And then it's really interesting to see what models give you back, and if that's the kind of society you want to live in or not, and who sets those rules for engagement in those types of contexts that are relational contexts, because we have those contexts and we understand them very well. There are human to human relationships and there are expectations around them, and you and I do not sign agreements or terms of service, but when I'm in a rush, you give way and you move to the side, or else it will be rude if you don't. And that's just really well understood. We do not have those conventions codified with AI at all. And increasingly, we put those systems in a relational role, whether it is a teacher, student, or, therapist, patient, doctor, co-worker. We were hearing about how we will all have agents as employees. What are the rules of engagement and behavior on both sides is a really interesting question, and it is top of mind for me now because OpenAI recently updated its model, and now it is flattering you whether you deserve it or not. It will not say a negative thing to anything you say, and that, of course, is extremely dangerous. It's just very, very dangerous. And they know this, and so they are updating it, that it will take time. But that kind of social engineering being run on hundreds of millions of users is not the responsible way to do this. And I think they're trying to do it, and they will iterate. I know tech companies well, they believe in the iterative approach to these questions, and that is maybe right. But for that feedback loop to be there need to be voices like Kids Help Phone telling these organizations what the benchmarks are, what the relational norms are, because you have that expertise in crisis prevention and suicide ideation and in dealing with people that are in a really dark place. Please take your expertise to the frontier model labs. Invest in that research, invest in that red teaming to show where the gaps are. Do not wait for OpenAI to solve these problems.
That's a good call out. I totally support everything you just said. I know you said earlier in the show that you don't consider yourself to be a superhero, but if you were, if you did have a superpower or a magic wand, however you want to visualize it, what would be the one thing that you would like to change?
So I really do think we all have a magic wand right now in our hands right now. That's what AI is. And I just want it to be more human-centered magic wand. That is what I want to change, is the nature of the wand itself.
Elena, this is fantastic. Thank you so much for joining me today. I was hoping you could share a bit more about how can people reach out to you if they have additional questions or learn more about your foundation.
Sure. I would love for people to get in touch with me on LinkedIn. Just find me there and you can maybe share a link to my profile. I'm also very happy to see people subscribing to our newsletter on humanfeedback.io. Just add your name and email. We will not spam you, but we will give you the lowdown on every piece of the work and on the work that we do at the organization. And if there are ways for you to get involved and for your nonprofit to benefit from the programs that we are running, we'll be rolling out more of them this year. And so there will be an opportunity for you to send your staff and your leaders in your organization to get training on responsible AI adoption, governance, and develop practical skills to use it in your work. Really important, and I'm happy that we've made the pilot happen. We've built incredible partnerships along the way. We work with University of Toronto and Toronto Metropolitan University on this, who are amazing delivery partners. And so please stay tuned, because the moment we go live, I know these programs will fill up very quickly. And so I would encourage people to stay and subscribe and stay tuned to the announcements that I know are coming. And another point I want to make is, please, I always encourage people to tinker with AI, because if it is a magic wand and you're just looking at it, not doing anything with it, you will be a beginner magician and you will, turn tables into frogs, and that's okay. That is what we're all going through right now. We really are trying to unlock proper magic that benefits us and isn't evil. But it does require tinkering and being curious and experimenting, and maybe building a small community around that so you can exchange the work you do in lessons and demo projects to each other. And I really don't know if, again, how much convincing I can do in education to the organizations that are going to be sitting on the sidelines. And I understand the risks and the fear, and I understand how complex it is. But those organizations that are open to experimenting, the time for that is now. And so please add your voices to the conversation and don't feel you're at a disadvantage at all, because you aren't. If anybody is expert on human human well-being and societal well-being, it is nonprofit organizations, and we are needed now more than ever. And maybe that helps people, some of us, overcome fear, if we are to build technology in a way that serves mankind. Maybe that fear is less important than fundamental mission organizations are there to serve.
I totally agree. Elena, thank you so much for joining me today. Thank you so much for doing the work that you do.
Thank you, Alex. Take care. Thank you.
All right. All right,
Okay.
that's it for today. I'm Alexander Lapa, and I hope you join me again in the next Agents of Nonprofit.